Welcome back to another episode of Seeking Discovery. It is a bright, sunny, warm day here in Florida, but there's no rain in the forecast, so it's a perfect day to be out at the bus. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit counterintuitive to what you would want to do when you think about converting a bus, and that is to put more holes in it. So today, I'm working on adding a vent to the roof, as well as some exterior outlets to the bus. So I don't know if you can see, but there is a rectangle that I have traced out here in the back, and I've got one kind of in each corner of the bus, and those are going to be exterior 120 volt outlets. So if I'm using power tools or things like that, I have an easy way to plug in from any corner of the bus, and so that's ultimately the goal. So what I've been doing is taking the angle grinder and coming in with a cutoff wheel and cutting the rectangle out and then dry fitting the actual receptacle box in there. I'm using slightly different boxes than what I used inside the bus for electrical to try to help with weatherproofing and things like that. So ultimately, that's what we're gonna be working on, cutting these holes here and then eventually climbing up on the roof and cutting some holes up there. It's really bright out here right now, so I apologize if this is kind of hard to see, but now that I've got the extension cord with the angle grinder, I'm gonna come in and cut this square out so we've got a spot to plug in outlets in the future. So now that we've got most of it cut out, I'm just gonna go in with the needle nose pliers and kind of poke at it till it comes loose. Kind of like that. And we can see that I got my spot that I had marked on the inside for it. So now I'm gonna take a file to it, clean up those edges and see how the receptacle fits. I've got my receptacle box. I see that it's almost good. The corners are hitting a little bit, so that's where I'm gonna use the file to come in and clean up those edges. So as you guys can see, we moved up to the front passenger side of the bus, and here's a rough in of what the outlets will look like. So on the inside, I have two boards that are spanning across the top that the box will be screwed into eventually. In the meantime, I'm gonna put some liquid nails on the inside of the metal, clamp those boards in, and let that set up. And once the liquid nails is set, then we'll screw these in, we'll be able to feed our wires in, and then come around and caulk anywhere there's a gap around the box. And then ultimately the faceplate will go on and help keep it weatherproof once we get an outlet in there. So even though I'm kind of making it up as I go, this seems to work pretty well. The spacing seems nice. So that's what we're gonna run with. I've got all the wood spacers cut, and now I'm gonna go get them in place with the liquid nails and clamp them down. As you guys can see, we've got these braces in here. There's one on the inside, one on the outside, and then we've got our two mounting points on the top and bottom, which have been glued in with their liquid nails. So now we're just gonna let this cure for a while, and then we'll be able to take the clamp off, put the box in, and then pull the wire and get the outlet in. Well, we let our backer boards dry overnight. You can kind of see here, I used liquid nails to put them up against the metal and then clamped them overnight. And now that we've got our opening there, we can get the outlet boxes installed. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go grab one of those, fit it in, and show you how we attach it. It's very easy, just 4 screws, and then we'll be able to take our extra wire and feed it up in through the outlet. So as you guys may have noticed, we've got the blue boxes on the inside, but because these outlets are gonna be going outside, I decided to go with these non-metallic weatherproof boxes. So I've got 2 plugs in them and then just one collar in the other. And we're gonna stick this into that hole, screw it in through the corners, and then we'll feed our wire in through here and we can put our outlet on the outside with a weatherproof cover. And as you can see, it fits in there really nicely. So now I'm gonna go grab some screws, screw in these 4 corners, and then we can take our extra wire we have here and feed it in through there. And we're just gonna be using our regular wood screws that we use to secure the plywood floors and other places in the build. We're just gonna come in, make sure everything's lined up the way we want it, kind of even out the gaps that we'll fill later. Come in with a screw, And there we go. Now we'll get the rest of them in. That outlet box is now secure. I did take the screws and angled them up on the top and down a little bit on the bottom to really get into the heart of the wood. But that box is secure, so we can get our wire, which I've got just coiled down here. And then we'll bring it up, go through the hole, and now we've got our wiring out there. We can put another staple on it here to help secure it, and then we can get our outlet on the outside and put our weatherproof cover on. So now that we've got our box wired up on the inside, it's time to add the inlet on the outside of the bus. So I've got a 2.5-inch hole saw, which is what my instructions told me to do. We're gonna pick a spot back here, and we're gonna go ahead and drill that hole in there so the inlet for the 50 amp service will fit right in there. So for my bus specifically, I need to keep it between this gap. I've got my areas where my water is gonna go in, which is left over from the stop signs, so that's what these are. So we're gonna do our electrical inlet over here, just a little bit away from those. We can't go farther than this window though, because that's where the bed frame ends, and I want this wire to come in behind the bed frame. So we're gonna put our earplugs in, because I'm sure this will be loud, and then we're gonna go ahead and drill our hole. And again, it's kind of an arbitrary spot. I have an idea of where I want it. There's nothing behind the wall here, so it's an easy shot right in. Okay, we swapped out the other hole saw for a little bit more heavy duty one, so let's see how this one goes. Ooh. Lots of hot metal bits going everywhere. Not fun. There we go. We got our hole out. We got it through our insulation as well. Through a little bit of hot metal, so that's why you should always wear some kind of safety equipment whenever doing stuff like this. So this other hole saw definitely had better power than the first one. So now it's time to go fish our wire through and get our piece ready to connect. So I ran inside, got my supplies. You can see we've got our big wire coming out. We've got the cap already on there, and then we've got our receptacle. So I've opened up the strain relief, and they make it really easy. You've got a white, a green, a black, and a red, which corresponds to the 4 wires we've got in there. So I'm gonna strip back the insulation, we're gonna get it lined up, attach the strain relief, and we should be good to slide it in. So we've got the tips of our wires stripped, ready to go. Now we're just gonna line them up to the corresponding holes and get them installed. So this is going in really easy. You just kind of have to put them all in together for it to work easily. There we go, we've got our strain relief on. We've got our cap back here we can line up. And there's a little pin that kind of shows you where you're supposed to line it up, so I'm just looking for that. As you can see, as I'm tightening this, all of the screws are getting covered up. And for now, we're just going to set this there so that we can test and make sure everything's wired up properly before we go ahead and attach that. So we've got this temporarily hooked up. I turned the breaker on for the exterior outlets, and I've got my outlet tester here. So let's go ahead and plug it in and see if our lights are good. And I know you probably can't see it on the camera, but I'm seeing the top LED and the bottom LED lit up, And when I look over here, it says if both of them are lit, the circuit is okay, which means we officially have shore power. So I just need to wrap up a few things inside and we are good to go for being plugged in the bus, which is really exciting. Now we're going to drill our mounting holes so that we can put our screws in and wrap up this install. Just making sure the gasket all looks good. And even though this has a weatherproof gasket, I'll come back later and add some caulk to it as well. Well, that's gonna wrap up today's video. We officially have shore power on the bus, and I picked up this nifty 15 amp to 50 amp converter by the same people who made this inlet, so that while the bus is out here at the build site, I can actually plug it in and now use the outlets on the inside. So if you're looking for something like this, I'll put links in the description to everything that we used today for the shore power setup. And eventually, once we get ready for solar and integrating that, I'll do an updated video about how all the solar system ties in with this inlet. So if you guys like this kind of content, be sure to give it a big thumbs up, leave a comment below of what you want to see next, and if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. Just a reminder, this is not a how-to video. I am not an expert. This is how I chose to do it. So if you do decide to do something like this, do so at your own risk and be sure to do your research and be comfortable with the decisions you are making. So we'll see you guys in the next video as we work to convert this school bus into a new tiny house. We'll see you later.